Today, Ocracoke Island is part of the Barrier Islands forming the Outer Banks of North Carolina, as well as the Cape Hatteras National Seashore. With the Atlantic on one side and Pamlico Sound on the other, it is accessible only by water or air. Boasting 16 miles of shoreline and beach, the village of Ocracoke lies on the southern end of the island and has been on the National Register of Historic Places since 1990. It is a quaint little place where speed limits rarely exceed 24 miles per hour and where streets can be clogged during the high season with sunburned visitors eager to explore all the resources Ocracoke has to offer. There is the fishing, the surfing, the camping, the swimming, and the tanning. For those who prefer to enjoy themselves away from the beach and the surf, there is the history, a past brought to life by the 1823 Ocracoke Lighthouse, one of the oldest on the Atlantic coast. The Banker ponies, descendants of horses first brought to the Outer Banks by Sir Walter Raleigh, and the British Cemetery, interred with the bodies of 4 British seamen who washed ashore, casualties of a German submarine attack upon their ship. The inlet at Ocracoke was inhabited centuries before the first European explorers came to its shores and before painter John White immortalized the Outer Banks in 1585. Little has changed at Ocracoke as time has passed. People were attracted by its isolated locale and rugged beauty then, and they still are today. But while people come today seeking recreation and relaxation, those in the past came to Ocracoke to hide and escape. The waters of Ocracoke, after all, are known to be the final resting place of one of the more famous pirates, Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. Little is known about the early years of Teach's life, but it is believed that he was born in Bristol, England in 1680. From there he embarked upon a life of piracy during Queen Anne's War in the early 18th century. Historians noted that while pirates are often portrayed as fearsome renegades, they were once invaluable in the struggle for seafaring supremacy, employed by competing countries such as England and Spain to harass rival commercial ships that might enhance the wealth and standing of another nation. The British Empire was known to hire pirates to raid other ships so that the crown might add to its wealth. These pirates were known as privateers, required to pay a fifth of their profits to the crown. For many, piracy was the means to amass wealth quickly, a way to move up through social ranks predicated upon having vast sums of money. Pirates could work for a few years and then retire to a quiet, anonymous life of affluence and influence in England. For the population at large, pirates provided goods at rates lower than what might be found going through the proper channels. Regardless, pirates were still a lawless element, and when wars were fought and finished, a class of tough seamen had been created, not all of whom were willing to go gently and quietly into a new way of life. They continued to raid the seas, doing what came easiest to them. It wasn't long before those who had fed their existence found that they had to police an element that had once been one of their greater assets. This was the lifestyle a young Edward Teach stepped into early in the 18th century when he served aboard a privateer ship sailing from Jamaica during Queen Anne's War. At the conclusion of the war, Teach did what a large number of privateers did. He joined the fraternity of the Brethren of the Coast and became a pirate. He headed to New Providence in the Bahamas, a location largely controlled by pirates. There, Teach came to the attention of Captain Benjamin Hornigold, reportedly one of the fiercest and most capable pirates then operating from New Providence. Hornigold was impressed by Teach, the way the young man thrived under pressure and excelled at combat. Teach was a natural, blessed with ability and skill. Before long, Hornigold had given Teach his own command, that of a ship seized in a fierce skirmish in 1716. In 1717, Teach captured the Concord, a large Dutch-built French Guineaman. He redesigned the ship according to his specifications and renamed the ship the Queen Anne's Revenge. The two would later become synonymous with terror. The mere mention of either man or vessel enough to incite fear in the heart of even the ablest of men. It seems that even then individuals were aware of the power of an image. Teach was not nearly as fearsome or terrifying as many believed him to be. Teach was aware of his reputation and cultivated an image to play up the more ridiculous elements of his legend. He grew a beard to an extraordinary length, coarse and braided. The beard was dark as pitch, twisted into tiny braids held in place by a variety of ribbons. The whole arrangement covered Teach's face, the perfect complement to his thick eyebrows. With an imposing and impressive build, Teach cut a fearsome figure indeed. In battle, Teach was fond of tucking lit fuse cords under the brim of his hat. The cords treated with saltpeter and lime water burned slowly, the wisps of smoke curling lazily around his head. Occasionally, Teach would stoop down to his cannons, igniting the power in them with his fuses. It may have been a little unorthodox, but his appearance did have an impact. Few had the will to resist Blackbeard when confronted with both his look and legend. Despite everything, Blackbeard was not a killer. If his victims submitted willingly, all they stood to lose was their property. Of course, if Blackbeard met with resistance, he could be cruel and vicious. In one cited example, a hapless victim refused to give Blackbeard a ring. Blackbeard, refusing to be denied, took both the ring and the finger wearing it. Yet he is also believed to have shot one of his own men to remind his crew of who their captain was. Blackbeard could be at once merciful and merciless. Captains of ships Blackbeard had plundered often exaggerated elements of the latter with hopes of saving their now questionable reputations. Blackbeard sailed through the West Indies and the Atlantic coast of North America. While there, Blackbeard found the Ocracoke Inlet in North Carolina's Outer Banks. The sight appealed to him. Numerous shoals and inlets in the area aided concealment, and if he was ever to be discovered, his knowledge of the topography would allow him to elude his enemies easily, and from the Ocracoke Inlet, Blackbeard could observe merchant ships coming and going, and wait patiently for the attack. Merchant ships were often caught unaware. No wonder that this isolated barrier island became a favorite haunt of Blackbeard's. When he surrendered in 1717 to take advantage of the king's pardon of all pirate crimes in that year, the pirate formerly known as Edward Teach retired to life with his 14th wife in Bath, North Carolina, just across Pamlico Sound from Ocracoke. By this time, Blackbeard had plundered an estimated 25 ships and accrued a large fortune, but he couldn't resist himself for long. Quiet retirement didn't suit his temperament. Within 6 months, Blackbeard was once again plundering the Atlantic coast along the Carolinas and Virginia. To ensure minimal interference with his activities, Blackbeard shared a percentage of his gains with North Carolina Governor Charles Eden. For a while, Blackbeard sailed the seas freely, but times were changing. The British colonies were developing rapidly, and trade was becoming increasingly important to their continued success. Blackbeard stood in the way of that progress, and citizens of the coast were beginning to tire of Blackbeard's constant presence. The people of North Carolina, realizing that their own governor would be ineffectual in bringing an end to pirate activity along the coast, turned to Virginia Governor Alexander Spotswood, who had dedicated himself to routing the scourge known as Blackbeard. In November 1718, Spotswood sent out an English Navy lieutenant named Robert Maynard to take care of Blackbeard. Two armed sloops, Jane and the Ranger, set off for Ocracoke, where Blackbeard had anchored his ship, the Adventure, with 25 of his men, to host a pirates' festival. Realizing what was happening, Blackbeard raised anchor and guided the Adventure through a narrow channel with hidden sandbars. The two sloops grounded themselves, but Maynard, commanding from the Ranger, ordered men on both boats to throw their water barrels overboard. The sloops were free, and they continued their pursuit. Within short order, cannon fire tore through the air, and Pamlico Sound was transformed into a battleground. The adventure had superior firepower, and the ranger bore the full brunt of her attack. Maynard quickly saw that there was little he could hope to do against Blackbeard from his vessel. He would have to draw Blackbeard onto his ship where the cannons of the adventure would no longer be an advantage. He ordered his men below decks. Blackbeard, seeing a deserted ship, presumed that the ship was now helpless. His assumptions was a prelude to weakness. Blackbeard and his men boarded the ship, where Maynard and his crew engaged the intruders in fierce combat. Maynard and Blackbeard stood toe to toe, each one pulling a pistol and firing. When they were too close for pistols, the two drew their swords. The situation looked grim for Maynard when his blade broke under the force of Blackbeard's stroke. But just as Blackbeard prepared to run Maynard through, a Royal Marine, coming to the aid of his fallen captain, stabbed Blackbeard in the neck with his saber. Yet Blackbeard did not fall. Only after being hacked, slashed, and shot repeatedly did the pirate finally succumb. He had been shot 5 times and stabbed over 20 times before he fell to the deck of Maynard's ship. It is said that before he died, he told his 13th wife that he would return and that his arrival would be heralded by sound of cannon fire. Maynard severed Blackbeard's head and hung it from his bowsprit as a warning to others. The body was dumped unceremoniously into the Atlantic. Legend says the body circled Maynard's ship 3 times before disappearing beneath the waves. Today, there are those who live along Pamlico Sound who claim that every now and then they will hear the sound of cannon fire and see, off in the mists of Ocracoke, Blackbeard's ghost ship sailing over the water. Others have seen his headless ghost wandering about the shore in search of his head, his voice and footsteps echoing through the air. Unexplained lights on the coast are fondly referred to as Teach's light, the ethereal glow from the lamp that Blackbeard is rumored to carry to help in his search. It's believed that Blackbeard continued his search out of fear that when he enters hell, the devil will be unable to recognize him without his trademark black beard. So he continues to haunt the land he loved so much in life, forever cursing Robert Maynard for consigning him for this fate.